So these five, I think they've done it in a way either that's completely different to the norm, so they're the most unique, or because
Mhm.
they've done it the way that everyone else does it, but they've done it really well.
I have a secret choice, which I'm not willing to reveal to you just yet.
Okay. Interesting. I like that. What's up, guys? I'm Ben, that's Rob, and this is DoProbe, a channel dedicated to thought-provoking content sending you down an information rabbit hole.
Today we're going to be discussing our picks for the best uses of time travel in film, trying to wrap our heads around each narrative's attempt to dodge temporal paradoxes and logical contradictions.
So hit that subscribe button and let us know if you agree with our choices down below. The interesting thing with Looper, obviously, is that in the film, the idea is that time travel is invented. They work out how to do it, and then they instantly make it illegal because they realize how much room there is for error with it. They're like, okay, this is a bad idea. The only people that are using time travel is mobs and gangsters who are using it for like dodgy means. This particular mob is sending people they want to kill backwards in time 30 years and having assassins 30 years ago set up killing them. They don't really go into it in the movie, but there's a wormhole created when they invent the kind of time travel. So the difference in time in Jump is always 30 years. So time ticks forward normally both ends of the wormhole. And we probably won't go any more into the plot than that, other than the fact that the idea is that they close their loops. So when an assassin ends his role as an assassin, they send that assassin back in time 30 years to get killed by themselves, by the past version of themselves. They've kind of got a bit of a paradox in there in the sense that when they send someone back, if that person in the past, like if their past self changes anything, those changes happen to the future version. So, for example, if he cuts himself deep enough to make a scar, the scar will just appear on the older person in the past. So any changes that happen for both of them.
The thing about Looper, and I know that we don't want to do any spoilers in this, so it's going to be tough to navigate this minefield. Something which crossed my mind when I watched it the first time, which was a really long time ago, was he can remember. So it's like he can remember things that his past self has done which he didn't do. So it's like his memories, like the scar. It's like a memory scar almost. And the thing about that I can't get my head around is he's having conversations with the future version of himself, which the future version of himself never had. So why is he affected by the memories? It's almost like they are two different people. So why would he get the scar of the past version of himself cutting himself when the past version of himself never had those conversations with the future version of himself?
So they're essentially saying that you can change the past. That's their idea. Is that it takes away the idea of fate and predetermined destinies. You're going back in time, and then changes can happen. It's kind of similar to Back to the Future, where Marty goes back in time and almost breaks up his parents, so they never get together, and you see him start disappearing. So it's used
fading away.
Yeah. So they kind of take into the concept of the butterfly effect in that small changes make differences later on. And the reason that I think Looper is so interesting actually is the fact that it's the same person. And they've managed to go, the consequences are there for you to see straight away with both characters in the same scenario.
So do you think that does that kind of branch into the, I can't remember what it's called, like the multi-world theory, where time essentially splits when you make a change, because otherwise he would have had to have encountered himself in the past the first time around, because it's a loop.
Well, I don't know though, because that's what I think is the interesting thing. I think the idea is that time is linear, and it's not. I don't think they're saying it's a different universe. I think what they're saying is time can just be changed. You can just change time,
and that doesn't change the past. As in, that doesn't, because that's the thing, isn't it? It's like,
yeah, it's horrible, isn't it?
Yeah. You know, because if you look at time as linear, it's almost like, unless you are ever visited by a future version of yourself, you will never go back and talk to your past self, because otherwise
Yeah,
it would
but
happen.
yeah, but that's the way of looking at it, like fate. But if you look at it in a completely different way, like, because we don't know, there's no way of knowing how it would work, and I think this is their take on how it would work, is that you could just change things, and the future would change as well.
To just take all those paradoxes and just be like, nah, don't need
Just
them.
run with them. Just see what happens. Yeah. A really mad thing. And it's something I think they purposely left this out the film because of the way that they say you can change the past and that will affect the future. I don't think at any point in the film Bruce Willis tries to kill the younger version of himself. For one reason, obviously, is the fact that he knows that if he kills him, he won't be there.
He will, yeah.
But the second reason is, like, if he went back and if he killed him, he would never exist to kill him, and that is the grandfather paradox, which is, for anyone that's never heard of it, it's the idea that if you went back in time and decided to kill your grandfather before he'd conceived your father, is that actually possible? Because if you kill your grandfather before he's conceived your father, you'll never be born. Therefore, you can never go back in time to kill your grandfather. So your grandfather's never died. So therefore, you will always be born. So it's a paradox because the two statements can't exist together.
Actually, that's the thing. It goes into the grandfather paradox, doesn't it? So, like you said about the grandfather paradox, you going back to kill someone, and in killing them, you completely remove the reason for going back to kill them, and that happens, doesn't it? Because they go back to kill, I can't remember his name, the guy as a kid.
What, you mean the mob boss guy?
The mob boss guy, yeah. But they go back to kill him as a kid. Obviously, they don't. But had they succeeded with that, would there have ever been a reason? So it's still I think it's still full of paradoxes. It doesn't, I don't know if it necessarily dodges them. So say hypothetically they do go back, kill the mob boss, he never exists, time travel is never utilized in that way. What happens then? It's not the grandfather paradox.
Yeah, that's also basically that's the same version of the grandfather paradox.
Exactly.
So they wouldn't. I don't know if that's. I don't even know if that could happen.
Exactly. Yeah, because but it doesn't happen. So I guess they don't have to tackle that.
Yeah. I guess that's the idea, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
They knew that they couldn't put that in there. You're kind of limited with your options in that sense. And I think maybe they
can't break your own rules.
No, so I think they danced around that quite well, actually. They've done that quite well.
Dodged it.
Messy one, though, isn't it? It's very messy. Time travel movies, generally, they're usually full of little plot holes that you're like, well, you can't do that, mate.
There's always exactly. It's a really dangerous topic to do in a movie, and also a dangerous topic to do as a YouTube podcast as well. So cast some slack, guys, please. I like source code because of the way that it doesn't really tell you what it's supposed to be. You think it's a simulation, and then it turns out that it isn't. And it's kind of it's the revealing of that as the film progresses, which I really like. I also really like the manifestation that he kind of creates for himself of being in the pod. He is just a mental manifestation of himself in this source code simulation that's designed to figure out who caused something that happened in the past. So the bomb on the train, they want to find out who caused the bomb on the train, so they put his consciousness into someone who was on that train, and then they replay it.
Hold on. maybe I don't know how many people have watched this film. Maybe give a little synopsis of it first.
This is the thing. Yeah, how do I give a synopsis of source code?
Should we just read the synopsis?
Helicopter pilot Colter Stevens, Jakey, is part of a top-secret military operation that enables him to experience the last few minutes in the life of Sean Fentress, a man who died in a commuter train explosion. The purpose of Colter's mission is to learn the identity of the bomber and prevent a similar catastrophe. As Coulter lives Sean's final moments, he becomes more certain that he can prevent the first tragedy from occurring as long as he doesn't run out of time.
It's very similar, actually, to Groundhog Day source code, in that it's almost done the way that games are, where you're on a level and then you
simply reset.
If you fail, you respawn to back at the beginning. And so he keeps going back to the beginning, where he's in this person. He's not even in his own body. He knows he's in a simulation, and it's someone else's body that he's like in, that he's controlling and moving around him. And he knows he keeps jumping back in this sort of It's not even really time travel, but it is, but it's not. But it's time travel in the way that Groundhog Day is time travel, in the sense that it's a respawning type of time travel. But I think this does it in a more impressive way than Groundhog Day, I would say.
Yeah, it is, like you say. It's that the do-over kind of thing.
Yeah,
you're not really. There's no implications, because no matter what you do, you just do it again.
Yeah, even if you completely mess up, you can just keep doing it.
Yeah, like you say, it's just like that video game logic of just reloading a save over and over and over again. But it's the development from that initial save game state simulation into actually being a reality. That's what I like about source code, because for me it takes something which is quite sinister, not sinister, but morbid, in the way that he died and he's just a tool now, a tool used for reliving 8 minutes only of people's lives who suffer tragic incidents. This was that was kind of the proof of concept test for source code. Was the whole concept of that film was the first time they were doing it. They had to have the mission be a success. So obviously he finds the bomber, and they arrest him in the real world. But the thing is that world that he was going into was a real world, which is revealed at the end. So is that time travel, or is that simply the source code is just projecting his consciousness into infinite versions of Sean on this train, and every time he resets, that timeline is still going on somewhere? The girl that he was with dies in that train explosion. All those people die in that train explosion. So the fact that he starts realizing that he can stop this catastrophe from happening, to the people in the real world, that's a ridiculous notion, because this is just a simulation purely using the memories of those people so that they can find and track down the perpetrator in their real universe. But Jake Gyllenhaal, who lives it, thinks that he can actually alter that catastrophe, and essentially he's right. He can, because it's not time travel. It's just putting his consciousness into this same point in multiple, almost infinite different timelines over and over again. And then eventually they switch off the machine and he gets to live it out as this Sean person, which kind of sucks for Sean, I guess, doesn't it?
Do you understand Donnie Darko, the time travel in Donnie Darko?
I don't think the people that wrote Donnie Darko understand Donnie Darko.
No, they definitely did. It's glorious. Because I tell you what, I have never in my life watched a film and felt like that. I mean, I did a bit with another film, which is coming up. But with Donnie Darko, my God, I watched that and I finished it and I just thought, that was a good film. I really enjoyed it the first time, but I didn't understand what any of it meant. And I knew that there was a deeper meaning to it, but I couldn't put my finger on how it actually wove into the fabric of the story, because the story seems to be saying something, but you don't really understand what that is. So I'm going to do a little quick explanation.
Okay.
And just roll my sleeves up for mind blowing.
Yeah, let me just prepare myself for mind blowing as well.
Okay, so at the beginning of Donnie Darko, he is sat in bed and he wakes up and there's a rabbit called Frank that drags him off out for a walk and tells him the world's going to end in 28 days. Basically, what's happened is at the beginning of the film, there's two universes split. A jet engine is replicated out of nowhere and poofs into existence, like a second jet engine. So the first jet engine landed back in where it's meant to land, and nothing is awry with it, and all the engines are on it. But this one is from that plane, but it's just now sat in your house, in your living, like in your kid's bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
There was a replication of that engine that dropped out of basically thin air, like the universe just magicked it, and that created a split in the timeline, which created a tangent universe. And the entire events of the film happen in that tangent universe where this second jet engine landed in Donnie's bedroom and would have killed him had he not been taken away by Frank. But the premise of the film is that a tangent universe is unstable and will collapse in on itself after a set amount of time. And in this case, it's 28 days. So Frank, who is like this rabbit weird thing, goes to Donnie and pulls him out of the room and saves him and says, you can save the world because when this thing becomes unstable, a black hole is going to be created and just collapse everything in on itself and end the world, basically. So Donnie is like basically charged with go and save the world. And he's given these like special powers because it's a tangent universe where like all these weird things are happening. He's given these special powers, like he can control water and fire, and he has like superhuman strength and stuff. But it's really subtle and it's not massively obvious. But there's little things that happen in the film where he just burns down his lecturer's house and he like floods the entire school and things like that.
Yeah.
And he's like really strong and like pushes these bullies over. They're these subtle things. It all culminates at the end. But so the idea is that they're living in this tangent universe and he's trying to get that jet engine back to the universe it's meant to be in. But he doesn't know how to do that until he's learned about it. So all the teachers in school and his girlfriend and his sister's boyfriend, they're all like actors in this universe who have been charged with getting him to do the act of sending the jet engine back in time, 28 days through a wormhole to the real universe. So he basically, everyone that's in the film that seems to be acting weirdly knows what's going on, and Donnie doesn't. So there's like the Frank the rabbit. Frank the rabbit is his sister's boyfriend dressed up as a rabbit, and his name's Frank. And like some of his teachers at school, are sat there, and his teachers are giving him books on time travel and like stuff like that. And there's this old mad woman who's there like with an empty post box, and he's like, he has a weird connection with her, and the reason is that she's had it happen to her before, and she was in Donnie's position before. So the idea is at the end of the film, there's this parallel tangent universe that he has to collapse in order to save the real world and everyone in it. So he like creates this wormhole and sends this massive jet engine back in time through this wormhole to the main universe where it came from, and in doing so ends the unstable tangent universe, and everyone back in the real world kind of has this weird vibe that something's happened, and they kind of know that something happened for them, but they don't know what it is, and they know that they should feel grateful. But it's a really weird use of time travel in a really strange way.
But he has to drop that jet engine back on himself.
Yeah, but it's kind of implied that he doesn't have to, but that he's become enlightened, and because he wakes up and like is laughing and stuff, and he just decides to stay there. Yeah, and he just decides to stay there and let the engine drop on him. It's a weird film.
Because, like you say, the woman that they had a connection with, so she's been through it, and so because it's almost like he's got the role of some kind of like hero, or you know, like the chosen one that's gifted with these powers, and the one that's charged with closing the tangent universe. So if she went through that similar thing, then and lived to tell about it, then I suppose he didn't really have to. But like you say, I guess he was just content with that anyway. He was a little bit crazy to begin with.
He was a bit mad. It's a great film, but it brings it's back to that. It's that kind of fatalistic. They know what's going to happen in 28 days. They set things in motion to get him to do things. So at the end of the film, there's things that happen where, you know, his girlfriend gets hit by a car and then he shoots Frank in the head, and it's like they've put him in that situation and built him into a place where he's like, my only option now is to do the thing I'm destined to do. And they've all of the other actors in that tangent universe, not all of them are like it, but all the ones that are in there that are trying to to push him in the right direction to get him to save the world have done it slyly, and you don't really know what they're doing at the time either. It's really, you only know it when you know it, and then when you know it and you watch it again, you go,
I see.
"Oh, that's genius." And
yeah,
and then
that makes a lot of sense. It follows a kind of predetermined sort of mindset, though, doesn't it? In the fact that because he can even see, he can at one point he can see like where
there's like a
people are heading and things
water.
like the water.
Yeah.
So that's implying that things are so the free will is kind of taken out of it again.
He
And
has a fascinating.
he subscribes to that belief himself, doesn't he? In the film,
He does. But he has a fascinating conversation with his teacher, who says, "No, you're contradicting yourself by saying that, because if you can see what path you should be taking, you then have free will to not." And he goes, "Well, what if we just follow that path?" And he goes, "I can't have this conversation with you." And that's because he's one of the actors. Because he's trying to... Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
He can't have that conversation with him because Donnie could choose to not take that predetermined path, but that would result in the world ending.
So when he said that he can't continue this conversation because he could lose his job, he means his job as some kind of like metaphysical actor, controlling the tangent universe, not his job as a teacher.
It's amazing because there's little parts in the film where like the teachers are sat there and they just start laughing and just go, "Donnie Darko," like, and just say his name, and you're like, why are they saying that? But it's just because they're like, why have they chosen this kid?
Now, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban is an interesting one because it received criticism as being like a plot hole in the Harry Potter series, saying, "Oh, you know, if they had I can't remember what the thing's called. Can you remember what the device is called?"
The time turner.
Time turner, exactly. Thank you. You know,
this
if
is well researched, isn't it? This is well.
I've watched the movie once. I'm perfectly qualified to talk about this stuff. The time turner. So, if they had the time turner all along, why don't they go back and use it to kill Voldemort before any of this ever happened? That's a really common criticism of the Harry Potter films, but I don't think that's accurate. In fact, I know that's not accurate because that's not the way that the time turner works in it. If anything, the big implication of the time turner in Harry Potter is, I think it almost removes free will from the equation because everything is predetermined. So, you know, when you go back, your future self was already there, causing the events that happened in the past, which means that you never really had any effect on it to begin with. You know, people view that as in the way that they went back and changed the fact that Buckbeak was killed, but Buckbeak was never killed. You know, it always happened the way. It's just the perspective. You view it in two different perspectives. So the first time when you're watching through the film, you view it from the perspective that Buckbeak dies, but then when you view it from the time traveler's perspective, you realize that they were there all along. And I mean, it kind of has an element of looking like free will because Harry realizes, well, this is the moment where it wasn't my father that saved me. I have to save myself here. But the thing is he was always going to do that. Because...
It's a great scene. It's a great scene for the way, as they're going back in time, you have this idea, and I think this is how J.K. Rowling did this perfectly. They've built you up to think, right, they're going to go back in time and save Buckbeak because Buckbeak's died. And in your head, you've got that notion of all these things that have happened, and they've left you with these little queries about, oh, it was his dad that saved him. How did that happen? Or, oh, you know, this person's in this place. Oh, you know, and then they go back and they show you can't change it anyway. It's already happened.
You can't.
I think it's almost like incredible how well it was done because of the expectation build up and then the payoff of we were here the whole time. And that's why the perception thing of everything's shown but not shown. It's implied that Buckbeak's dead, and that's why they're sad. And then they go back and realize Buckbeak was never dead because they were the ones that saved him. Like the rocks coming through the window, and they're going, "Oh, what the hell?"
Exactly.
And you don't even notice it the first time you watch it. The rocks coming through the window. You just think, "What the hell's going on out there?" It's a really great way of doing it, but obviously with that, it's that fate thing again, where you don't even, the choices aren't choices you've made, that you've they are, but you've already made every choice because you've already decided to go back and sort it before. So that kind of throws in the idea of fate with things, and I think that the reason that works so well is because in Harry Potter they set up the premise at the beginning that there is a determined fate with this child, and that he has big things coming, and that all ties into the idea of Harry Potter and the prophecies and all that thing with magic, is that it is like a kind of philosophically is quite theological, isn't it? And that kind of idea of fate is quite theological, and that's why her use of that type of time travel just fits perfectly within the I guess the franchise of Harry Potter. And it's such a beautiful way to do it, and not go, let's have messy loose ends and you can change things that happened in the past. No, it's all stuck in that section. It's great.
Yeah, but if anything, it almost kind of, it doesn't remove the point, but it sort of does remove the point of time travel because it was there all along.
Well, it's a plot point, isn't it? It's a plot point, and it's not used as anything else, and it's not a time travel film, and it's not a time travel franchise. But what they've done is they said we can use this plot and tie it up neatly and end the story with, it's what, like a 20-minute section in the whole franchise, but it's neat, it's tidy, it all makes sense.
It's super neat.
Oh, it's fantastic.
And it dodges, so like unlike Looper, where it kind of is faced with these paradoxes, it doesn't really have to deal with any of those. If anything, I'd say that the closest one it comes to is the bootstrap paradox. When something is created by someone going back into the past, I'm trying to think of a good example. So say there was a lecture or a scientific discovery which allowed you to go back in time, and you then went back in time to the person that created that scientific theory which allowed time travel to be possible, and you told them about their theory, and they went on to develop on it and actually design time travel from you going back to tell them about their own idea. It's like, where was the creation of that? And I feel like that's the only one that the Harry Potter thing kind of goes into, because, the thing like throwing the stones at the glass jar, there's an event, and in fact, all the events are all events that happened the first time around, but they would have always had to have been there. So where were they created?
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I guess the idea with that is there is no first time, and that it's all predetermined anyway. And I think that's
the thing. It's kind of like the past, the present, and the future must all be happening concurrently.
Yeah, I think that's her logic with it. Is the reason the reason there's prophecy in the films, and the reason there's the reason there's kind of fate is already determined for people in the films. I think the idea of that is that her logic of it is that it's not an event happening for the first time, and it never happened for the first time. Time just exists, and we are walking along it, but if you took a further step view out on it, you could see the entire timeline. I guess that's her logic for it, is that the whole timeline from start of the universe to end of universe, if you could see the whole thing, is there. It's just we're on it, so we can't see it. And that's a useful way to look at time.
What it also kind of what it implies is when you have this loop, it's it's an infinite cycle of previous use and future use going back in order to alter, or not even alter, that's the wrong word, but in order to cause events to happen as the way they do. Even cause is the wrong word, but basically you've got a cycle of past and future selves repeating. Who's to say you're not trapped in that
so
time
they tie it up quite nicely. You notice the clock tower. So at the very beginning, she's going at the clock tower at this time on this many bells, and that's why they're rushing back to the clock tower, because literally as they vanish back in time, the previous version of them walks through the door, and Ron just goes, "What? You moved? You were there, then you were there," and that is the last version. It's not their version.
Ron doesn't even go back, does he?
Because Ron doesn't go back. Poor Ron. So the idea is you have to be at a set place at a set time in your loop to finish your loop. So you get back to there and then that's done.
And you close it.
You close the loop and then you carry on with your normal life. And it's like we said earlier, it's so neat.
Which is just such a uncommon occurrence in time travel.
I know.
Nothing is neat.
Nothing's ever neat in time travel, but somehow she managed to use her narrative wisdom to just make this perfectly crafted, completely
I'd actually go as far as to say that it might be the best, like not the best, but just because it's so satisfying, because it's so neat. I mean, it's up there in my list for time travel. That's got to be.
It's not the most interesting necessarily, but it's the most
exactly,
and it's not the most unique, but it's the most neatly put to film, I would say.
Yeah,
narratively speaking.
Yeah.
With Tenet, I feel like Christopher Nolan really grabbed the idea, like the concept of going back in time, and put his own version on it.
It's completely different.
The idea with Tenet is that everything is set. You can't change anything. So there's a sense of fate involved. They bring up during the film the grandfather paradox, and Tenet actually has a very good way of making that impossible by saying everything that you do has already been done. So the future version of you has already done it, and they link cause and effect together really well. So the way that they have time travel involved in the film links cause and effect by reversing the entropy of objects. So their time machine, I'll call it a time machine loosely, because it's not really a time machine. It's a machine that you walk into, and it just all it does is reverse the entropy of the object that enters the machine. So, for example, if a human goes in there, when they come out, they're still moving forward in their perception. For them, they're still acting in a forward motion. They will take a step forward. They'll breathe normally, but the problem is everything around them is working in the opposite entropy. So the air they breathe, as they breathe in, is like CO2, not oxygen. If they got shot when their entropy is reversed, they would be, if they're shot earlier on, or for them later on in their timeline, they'll have a wound that's healing, that's getting worse and worse and worse and worse until they finally get a bullet come flying out of them and go back into a gun.
So does it mean so what it is the entropy is only reversed for certain objects?
It's only reversed for the objects that go through the machine. Cause and effect would be reversed for that object. If a pen,
it would look like it was in rewind.
Everything, yeah, it looks like it's moving backwards. So a pen, you'd put your hand out and say like, "Oh, I would have moved this pen," and the pen would just roll towards your hand. A bullet would fire into a gun, not out of it. Everything's so any object that's been reversed has the opposite effect happen to it, and essentially you can't change what's happened to it because it's already happened. It's a really interesting concept.
Does that not? So from what I've seen, like the couple scenes I have seen of the film, he puts his hand over a bullet, expecting it to fly up into his hand, but it doesn't, because he had to have dropped the bullet for it to actually fly back up into his hand. But then he doesn't drop the bullet. It's almost like he wills that, like you say, like he would have dropped the bullet, therefore the bullet comes up into his hand. Is that kind of what you're saying?
No, so you can't affect it any differently to the way it's already been affected. So
that's
you
what I was
have
thinking,
you
because it's
have
like
to have dropped the
there's no
bullet.
free will, so you have to have dropped the bullet.
You have to have dropped the bullet for in order for the bullet to fly into your hand. You have to have shot the bullet for the bullet to come flying out of the wall.
But then where does it reverse? Where does it reverse? Because say he never dropped, like where's the kind of the point when dropping the bullet is now reversed so that it comes back up into his hand? Like,
so
what
just because
because the bullet doesn't go through the machine after it's been dropped.
No, but you can still act on an object that's been reversed. It's just that for that
so
bullet,
he picks up the bullet, drops it, and then it.
Yeah, because if you think about that bullet after he's got it in his hand. If you think about it from the bullet's perspective, which is reversed, so the bullet is moving backwards in time. So
yeah,
was in his hand before he dropped it for the bullet. You see what I mean?
So the bullet, as far as the bullet's concerned, it was in his hand.
As far as the bullet's concerned, it was already in his hand and he dropped it. But for him, the bullet jumps into his hand.
Yeah, it's a strange concept.
It's very strange, and that's why Christopher Nolan is Christopher Nolan, because he puts this level of detail into a film where your brain just cannot deal with it.
Yeah.
So it's a really strange film. There's a really great idea in the movie called the temporal pincer, and that's just super confusing. But essentially, it's a move, like a pincer move. So that's in a normal pincer move would be you come around, you flank both sides, and
I think I see where this is going.
Yeah, so you have,
but you do it in so temporal, so from the future and the past.
Yes, so you've got a group, 5 of them working backwards through time, and 5 of them working forwards through time, and then they meet each other at the ends and discuss what happened, so that they now have the prior knowledge of what's going to happen. So they're both walking into the situation with prior knowledge gained by the other team, so that when they go through, they already have learned from those mistakes. And it's a really strange one to get your head around, isn't it? Can I don't know if I explained that. Did you understand what I said there? Like, does that make sense? In
half of it did.
So imagine it like paintball. If you had two teams playing paintball, imagine one of them's coming backwards and one of them's going forwards through the paintball field, and then they both tell each other at the end before they start, this is where the people are hiding, and this is where you need to duck down when this happens, and move around because this car is going to come out of here.
So basically, the people moving forwards through time with normal entropy are just gaining knowledge from the people that have moved backwards.
Yes, because of the way that the film works. Once you've gone through the reversed entropy thing, the time travel part of it, in terms of how much time passes, it's still done at a normal rate. So you don't. There's no jump. There's no. You go into the machine and then you're 10 months back in time. It's you go into the machine and then you just come out with the same time difference. Like time ticks on in seconds, but it ticks on in seconds backwards in time. So if you need to go 3 months back in the past, you need to go and sit and wait out 3 months on a boat and wait for 3 months to pass so that you can go do your thing that you needed to do 3 months ago. But obviously, if they need to have a place where they can get into another machine to turn their entropy back round to go forward again, because if you didn't find another machine to turn your entropy to go back round, you'd just be stuck in reversed entropy forever, because you just age backwards forever. It's a really
of course, so you'd actually age backwards.
Well, no, I don't know. No, you're from your, so it's relative. It's the same way that time is relative in everything.
From your perspectives,
you're still aging.
So say if you could actually theoretically make a machine big enough that would reverse the entropy of everything, that would be nothing had changed.
Yes, yeah. So if you could reverse the entropy of the entire planet, everyone on the planet would still be moving forward and nothing would be changed. The reason reverse entropy works is because you're relative to everyone else who's not been reversed.
that's a really unique way of. It sort of reminds me of Primer in a way.
It is similar to Primer, that indie film. Yeah,
yeah, because I mean, only in the sense that when they step into their time machine, they have to wait it out for the set amount of time that they wanted to go back. And also, I imagine Tenet probably uses this as well. No, you can't. Oh, actually, I suppose it wouldn't. I suppose you could have things with reversed entropy going all the way back through time if they never got back into the machine. But like in Primer, time cannot be set back to the point before that machine was created.
Yeah. Tenet's a tough one. Tenet's a really hard one to try and explain the because I don't think even the film does the best job of explaining it. But I think that's kind of the fun of the film. It's one of those ones
that you have to Google and watch like 1,000 times.
Yeah, that's the fun of the film, because I watched it maybe 3 or 4 times. The first time I was like completely lost. The second time I was like, okay, I kind of get most of this now. And the third time I was like, oh, this is amazing. But yeah, it's a really interesting.
I've got it now. I've got it rented, and I'm literally going to watch it. Like as soon as we finish recording this, I'm going to continue watching it.
Yeah, enjoy, man, enjoy. I'm sure you'll love it.
So I think now I want to talk about my bonus use of time travel in film and TV, which is an anime. And it ties into the black hole stuff nicely. It's called Steins Gate. Now anyone that knows me knows that I'm a massive anime nerd. Anyway, I absolutely love them. But this one, I swear to God, it's not cheesy. It's really good. But they kind of dodge a lot of paradoxes by creating a time machine which essentially creates a small black hole. And they don't travel back themselves. Well, they do eventually, but initially the whole idea behind their version of time travel is they send back information. So they can send a text message back through time, and then eventually they can send a consciousness back through time. And so what that does is the person back in time can then change events as they see fit. The future or the present changes, and people's memories change without them realizing. The past and present and future is happening concurrently, but they can affect it, they can manipulate it by sending information back through these tiny black holes. And technically, theoretically, mathematically, this is possible with something called a Kerr black hole. So a standard black hole obviously has a singularity, where the point in the middle where mass is infinitely dense, and if you touch that singularity, you're fucked, basically. That's kind of the whole thing. It's like, obviously, if you forget all the other implications that come with black holes, like event horizons, time dilation, and things like that, a Kerr black hole is one that is not charged but is spinning, and the singularity, rather than being a spherical point in the center, it's a ring, and it has 2 event horizons, not just one. So this is the theory in Steins Gate. So basically what you can do is you can send, so theoretically, once you cross the event horizon, I want to say polarity, but not really polarity, but the fact that we move through time consistently, and we can affect how we move through space, is how we understand the universe. But when you cross the event horizon, they switch. So you can now move through time as you would move through space, but you move through space in a linear fashion towards the center of the black hole and the singularity. But the 2 event horizons, they flip back again. So essentially, if you were able to, you'd go through between the 2 event horizons, be able to manipulate time around you and move through time in such a way that you're still moving through space in a linear fashion. And then you cross the 2nd event horizon, where you can now move through space and not time, and then dodge the ring singularity and then come back out the black hole. Theoretically, apparently that's possible.
But how are you controlling it though?
I have no idea.
Jesus.
I have no idea how you control. I guess.
So maybe a good example of what this would look like would be that tesseract that they create for
You're talking about Interstellar.
Interstellar. That tesseract would be
Yeah,
a version of that.
exactly.
So this
Like
is
when
our.
you were describing that, that's exactly what I was thinking of. When he
So I guess
actually
that would
enters the
be.
black hole, he almost can view things in it, because it was kind of like portrayed as in the fact that the higher dimensional beings, that they constructed it in a way that he would understand what's
Yeah.
inside a black hole, that he can see past events all laid out before him, and
And
he
act
can.
upon them in small ways.
Exactly, yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. And that's what did you
Mm.
say the name of that show was?
It's called Steins Gate. Honestly, even if you don't like anime, like it, I think it's really good. It's really interesting take on time travel, sending back information. It's a good one.
I do.
Thanks for watching another episode of DoPro, guys, with new fancy backlighting. Let us know down in the comments if you agreed, disagreed with any of our choices, or if you think that we missed anything out. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and check us out in the future for more interesting content.